nothing else, Star Wars The Acolyte has been a controversial show and has gotten lots of people talking about Star Wars, and that's never a bad thing. Most recently, the controversy amongst a certain subset of people who watch the show, we're not going to call them fans, but they're upset because they say that the lightsaber choreography in Episode 7 of Star Wars Acolyte, wherein Jedi Master Kelnacca, the big ass Wookiee, goes up against Master Soul, they call this one of the worst choreographed lightsaber sequences ever.
It's not true. That's impossible.
And I just have to question, do they actually understand how the Force works or not? Because that's how this is really working. Anyway, I'm going to spoil the whole episode, so if you haven't yet watched episode 7 or you don't want things spoiled, this is your warning because everything from here is going to be spoiler territory. So you've been warned. So, the premise here is that Kelnacca is a big ass Wookiee. Wookiees are not known for being fast, agile creatures. They are lumbering, slow, kind of, I don't want to call them sloth like, but they are large creatures who lumber around. They're not jumping and leaping and all these other things, although the Force can help them in such situations if they were to manipulate the Force that way or if they had certain Force abilities that would help them. Meanwhile, Soul is more of a martial arts expert and he is much more adept at jumping around and being fluid and having that agility, and it's just different fight styles. The big thing to understand here is if you've ever done any sort of like great sword fighting, what they're trying to portray on screen is the fact that Kelnacca is a massive force to be reckoned with. It takes multiple Jedi going up against him to slow him down and stop him because he is so strong. Is he fast? No, he is very slow, but he is very forceful in his movements. So when you see his lightsaber swings, they are wide, sweeping strokes. He does huge leaps and swings his lightsaber down. There is a lot of very slow, purposeful movement here meant to represent that he is a massive creature with massive strength in the Force, and he is using that to his advantage as opposed to moving around quickly. You can remember the fight sequence with Yoda bouncing around, whether it was against Count Dooku or against Palpatine. You know, that's a tiny little creature with bunny legs, and he's like, "Fip, fip, 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 fip," and that's just the nature of how the Force works with these characters. That being said, I think that for my money's worth, I thought it was a great scene. We've had several different types of lightsaber fights in the show so far. We've had your standard sort of what you would see in any other show or film. We had a really epic fight between Khmer and the entire Jedi task force who got wiped out. That was pretty awesome. Then you have the fight sequence here. Really, ultimately, it's between these two guys. Although you also have the Padawan. I always forget his name. Starts with a T. He was in this episode as well and was getting his butt handed to him by our Wookie Jedi. And in the end, it took the Jedi Master, her coming down to the planet and helping break the bond. But the other thing here that was going on, which a lot of people aren't taking into consideration, is the fact that he was being mind controlled by the entire coven of witches this whole time. So, and I'm just casting the benefit of the doubt and playing devil's advocate here from a storytelling perspective. We don't know what was written into the script on paper about the effect that an entire coven of witches controlling him would have on his ability to move. That could have slowed him down. It could have made him more powerful, amplified him, but at the cost of speed. We don't know. But at the end of the day, when I watch this lightsaber sequence, I don't see bad choreography. I see purposeful choreography, and in the sense that he's a big, lumbersome creature with a lot of strength in the Force. He's not going to be jumping around doing backflips like little Yoda. He's certainly not going to be able to match Soul's dexterity. But he is extremely forceful to the point when he's got, what is it, Tenebris? I forget the guy's the Padawan's name, when he's got him pinned up against the wall with one hand like smashing his face into the wall, and he's like pushing the lightsaber into the guy's side, and you've got Soul over here like grabbing his arm like stop, stop, and like trying to get him to calm down and come out of this rage state that he's in because of the coven. um, all of that points to me at just more of a force fight as opposed to a lightsaber fight. Remembering that lightsabers are the weapon of the Jedi, but they are nothing more than a representation of the fighting style. The force is everything here. If you've ever played, as an example, Star Wars: Yoda Republic is a good example of this because they go into the classes of the different Jedi, and so every Jedi has a different fighting style, and they've kind of simplified it somewhat over the years. In the way they have the combat styles these days. But if you go back to the launch of Star Wars: New Republic, the Jedi actually had stances, and each one of those stances was dependent upon whether or not I'm going to be in a tanky stance, which is, defensive and slow and not about any speed whatsoever. And then there was, I'm going to be the Sentinel with two lightsabers, and it's all about lickety split, fast, fast, slice and dice. There was always purpose behind that. The Jedi consoles being able to, perhaps, throw rocks while also wielding a one-handed lightsaber, but they were always very slow in their movements because their primary purpose was with the Force, not with the lightsaber. So this is where I come back to, if you really know the lore of Star Wars, beyond just the films, but if you know all of Star Wars, and if you're a fan of the intellectual property, then you realize that the Force is the most powerful weapon at play, not lightsabers. And the fact that he's not bouncing around like Yoda doesn't indicate poor choreography. It just means that they actually planned this fight to look that way specifically to tell a story on screen. And that story is that the Wookiee's big, he's very powerful, he's a lot slower than everybody else, and that's not a bad thing. So I'm on board for it. I do think that they promoted the lightsaber choreography in this show as like the best thing since, Duel of the Fates. And I've covered this in a previous episode. I do think that, I think it was episode 6, when we got the big fight between, our big baddie and the entire Jedi strike force that got taken out. That lightsaber sequence, the fight sequences in that episode were very, very good. Without a doubt, very, very good. But also not as good as, for me, I personally liked, Duel of the Fates is great, and Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon versus Darth Maul is absolutely amazing. Obi-Wan versus Anakin is amazing, in Revenge of the Sith. But in Obi-Wan Kenobi, the show that came out last year, that sequence between Hayden and Ewan, where they went in and it's Darth Vader versus Obi-Wan Kenobi, not Anakin versus Obi-Wan, but Darth Vader versus Obi-Wan. That fight sequence to me stands out as like the best lightsaber choreography we've seen, because it was brutal. The Force was involved. They're throwing each other around into pillars and stuff. It was intense stuff. And at the end of the day, I'm happy to see lightsabers on screen no matter what, because I've been a fan of lightsabers since I was like 3 years old. So give me more. I'm always going to be happy to see that on screen, and the whoosh, wom, 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 wom. I'm on board for it. Episode 8 is just around the corner, the season finale. We will, of course, be reviewing it here on the channel, and I'm also going to be diving into some post-Acolyte discussions with people who want to have a greater discussion about the show and what comes next for Star Wars, because we have Skeleton Crew around the corner, also Season 2 of Ahsoka. We've got the Mandalorian and Grogu movie coming in the pipeline, next season of Andor. There's still lots of runway for all things High Republic, Skywalker Saga, New Republic, all the eras. I can't wait. Always happy to see more. Until next time, everybody, stay safe, happy watching. May the Force be with you.